Starting off this countdown, we have the rat pigs. The Salk Institute for Biological Studies in the US has been known to run a number of crossbreeding experiments. One was performed on rats and pigs. The team of scientists decided to take stem cells from rats and inject them into pig blastocysts. However, this failed, and I mean, I'm not surprised. Rats and pigs have different gestation times, and genetically they are very different. But imagine a pig that looked like a rat. Okay, that is terrifying. In our 9th spot, we had the human Z attempts. In 1967, scientists in China were working on creating a human-chimp mix. Sadly, not much information about these experiments have been disclosed to the public. But rumor has it that the experiments didn't really work. They wanted to basically create a chimp that could talk fluently in whatever language it was taught. Then in 1981, they tried this experiment again. They impregnated a female chimpanzee with human sperm. Turns out, the chimp did manage to get pregnant by it, but sadly passed away 3 months later due to complications. Coming in at number 8, we have the rat mouse. Scientists at the Salk Institute have found a way to grow the pancreatic tissue of a mouse inside of a rat. The mouse pancreas was able to grow inside of rats successfully. So they grew these new pancreases from mouse stem cells that were then placed in the bodies of the rats. And then when the pancreases were complete, they transplanted them back into the mice. Now the biggest thing about this experiment is that this technique could reverse diabetes in the mice. So they hope that one day they can grow organs inside the bodies of different animals, and then you transplant those organs into humans to cure diabetes. Of course, there's still so much work to be done on this. The last thing they want is to grow a human organ inside of an animal and then have the recipient's body reject it. In our 7th spot, we have the killer bees. Did you know that killer bees were accidentally created by scientists? If they're out here creating bees that threaten the ecosystem, then who's to say they won't create animals that do the same? Basically, this all started in the 1950s. A biologist was commissioned by the Brazilian government to create a species of bees that would increase honey production. But along the way, things went wrong. The biologist himself didn't have much experience with animal breeding. In the end, bees from southern Africa and local Brazilian honeybees mated, and it produced these angry killer bees. And then of course, thousands of these bees just accidentally escaped. Now they get their name because when pissed off, they have been known to chase people down for more than a quarter mile. And on top of that, their stings are very painful. These bees are also aggressive towards other bees as well. So it puts them at risk, and now we're kinda just stuck with them. In our 6th spot today, we have the human mouse. In the late 90s, 3 doctors started doing experiments to try and create human body parts in a lab. One of these experiments involved growing a human ear on the back of a mouse. So they did this by creating an ear-shaped scaffolding and putting cells of cartilage from a cow on it. They then put the mouse under anesthetic and placed this ear under its skin. Crazily enough, the mouse's body fed the cow cartilage cells. The scaffolding dissolved and the mouse grew this artificial shape of a human ear. But it was only the outside of an ear. Okay, it didn't work, there was no eardrum. Now you might be wondering why they did this. Well, their hope is that this will help plastic surgeons when reconstructing human ears for their patients. So they would create this ear on the mouse and then graft it onto the person. So you'd have an ear that is part mouse, part cow. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the goat with human milk. I swear I didn't make this up, it's real and I'm a little disturbed. But basically, scientists have figured a way for goats to produce human breast milk. They did this by transferring human breast milk enzymes and proteins into goat embryos. In the end, they found that the milk the goats were producing wasn't 100% human, but it contained 60% of the lysosome and lactoferrin found in human milk. Now, why do they want goats producing human breast milk? Well, it could feed and save babies in need. Plus, it would have a longer shelf life. Would you try this milk? Let me know in the comments below. I've heard breast milk is pretty sweet, but I don't think I want to try it. Coming in at number 4, we have the Belgian super cow. Now you guys know how much I love cows. And if you didn't know, then hi, my name is Lindsay and I love cows. But this thing is terrifying. It's monstrous, okay? It's super ripped and it's just massive. The Belgian super cows were created back in the 1800s when Belgian scientists and farmers mixed native cattle with shorthorn cattle. Then over the time they would select the biggest and strongest offsprings of each variety and then breed them together. So on and so on, bam! You got a super cow, which is definitely the biggest and strongest, and I understand why they call it the super cow. Like, just look at this beast, okay? It could crush anyone. In our third spot, we have the Enviro Pig. So pig waste is actually pretty toxic. I mean, if you've seen the Simpsons movie, then you'd know all about it. I mean, that was a bit of an exaggeration, but still. Anyways, pig's waste contains really high levels of phosphorus. This phosphorus ends up in lakes and rivers and oceans and can cause a boom of algae. So scientists were trying to come up with a way for pigs to have less toxic waste, hence the creation of the Enviro Pig. Enviro pigs are pigs with up to 65% less phosphorus in their excrements. This pig was first created in 1999 at the University of Guelph's Farm in Canada. This pig had its phytase gene attached to a piece of mouse DNA. Now, it's really complicated to explain, but here's an explanation, and I quote, "The genetically altered pig was created using genetic material from a mouse and an E. coli bacterium to reduce phosphorus in the pig's feces. In the end, it made the pig excrete fewer pollutants." Moving on to number 2, we have the pig with human blood. Now, you're probably noticing a trend by now. Pigs and mice are the scientists' test subjects of choice. Researchers at Mayo Clinic in Minnesota have managed to create pigs made out of human blood. So the pigs have human blood pumping through their veins. Not only that, but some of the cells in the blood merge together to create pig-human cell hybrids. Now, the reason behind this all is to allow scientists to study how viral infections can transfer from animals to humans. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Oliver the chimp. In the 1970s, there was a performing chimpanzee that received a lot of attention. His name was Oliver. Now, Oliver was really different from other chimps for a number of reasons. The main being that Oliver might have been a successful mix between a human and a chimp. Yeah, you heard me. A lot of doctors and scientists are convinced that Oliver was a humanzee. It's believed that they inseminated a female chimp with male sperm, and Oliver was the offspring. Now let's take a look at the facts. Oliver didn't look like other chimps. In fact, he had a more human-like appearance. He had a flatter face than other chimpanzees, and he walked on 2 feet instead of all 4s. He also preferred human females over female chimpanzees, and he understood humans very well. So could it be that Oliver was actually half human, half chimp?
Starting our list off at number 10, Ilya Ivanov. Beginning in the late 1800s, here we go, Soviet biologists, they actually got permission from the country to breed hybrid ape humans. What did you get up to last summer? I'll never tell. She grafted an ovary into a chimp, and the goal was to fertilize Nora, the chimp, with human DNA. So they inseminated a group of chimps. None of them got pregnant, so instead they tried to flip the project up. Now this time they had a human inseminated with the DNA of chimps. Yeah, the other way around. The volunteer number was low, obviously. Now before anything actually happened, this would have been an absolute train wreck. Before the project was underway, he was sent away to Kazakhstan. So we didn't get any more science projects after that point, thankfully. Yeah, let's just leave monkeys alone. Number 9, human-monkey hybrid. Guys, I wish this was fake, but it's not. So scientists, they're currently trying to make human-monkey hybrids, like the title just said. They have high hopes that these experiments will succeed because monkeys and humans are similar genetically, so obviously we're gonna try a few times. Spanish biologist Juan Carlos Esbizula Belmonte is working with monkey researchers in China right now to perform these experiments. So basically they're mixing human cells into monkey embryos and then they're just gonna see what happens, I guess. I don't know. Hope it goes well. Their objective is to grow a monkey whose organs are completely made of human cells. Doesn't that sound just terrifying when I say it out loud like that? Then they would use said animals and their organs for people that need them. Yeah, of course this is a little bit controversial in a few ways, so let's just keep moving on. Number 8, Jose Delgado. Okay, we're talking about mind control, so I'll give you a moment to put on your tinfoil hats. You might need those for this one. In the early 1900s, Jose Delgado graduated from the University of Madrid. Even lands a professorship at Yale University, but his mind, the whole time, his mind was focused on others. He had other ideas going on. He was committed to mind control, and his go-to method was implants. Yeah, electrode implants, first used with, you guessed it, primates. Yeah, 3 for 3. Weird. He would use a remote control to make them do certain moves, even, moving on to mind controlling a bull. So he was kind of changing the animal game up as he went. He liked to improvise. He got in the ring with said mind controlled bull, but then oddly enough, the bull was calm. It didn't attack. That's weird. Almost like there's an implant in his brain and he doesn't want to do anything. Reports say he stopped the bull last second before it charged. I call bull. I say there's a thing in his head and he wasn't sure what was up the entire time, little poor lad. And then next in the project line came the people. 25 people were tested on with said mind control device. Yeah, by electronically controlling the brain. He believes armies could be controlled down the road, and until his death in 2011, he was upset that he wasn't cited as often in terms of mind control project in recent studies. Yeah, weird. Guy who mind controlled animals in the 1900s. We're trying not to do that maybe. I don't know. That's why we're not talking about you. Number 7, see-through frogs. Here we go. Just when you thought frogs were already hard to spot, boom, now they're invisible. Good luck catching them. Back in 2016, through artificial insemination, scientists successfully took the DNA of 2 kinds of recessive color frogs, black-eyed frogs and gray-eyed frogs. Then they combined them together to create a frog whose skin is now always translucent. They made an X-Men of a frog. We love it. The see-through factor allows observation of organ growth or cancer formation. That's the human science thing. And it kind of helps when you can see the problem, I guess. No dissection needed for further study. Right? Just looking through you. That's pretty intrusive. I don't know. Imagine being see-through all the time. Like, hey pal, my eyes are up here. Quit staring at my pancreas. Number 6, Tigons. Let Tigons be bygones. Let's never do this ever, please. I was gonna say liger, but that's been used before. We all know what that one looks like. Tigons were a real hybrid animal that you could see for yourself at both the London Zoo and the Manchester Zoo at one point in history. This was of course back in the late 30s, where folks didn't bat an eye towards these kind of projects or these kind of things. Yeah, step on up and see the Tigon. A tiger head and a lion body, and a tiger tail, all together to make a big old pile of holy. Yeah, that's what happens when you put animals in the same cage. Sometimes they get along a little too well. Tigon hybrids were seen long before the 90s as well. In 1837, for example, Queen Victoria was gifted a Tigon. That's odd. They're like flowers or a hybrid creature. What do we give the Queen? Number 5. DIY. Not sure how many times I have to say this in life, but don't try any crossbreeding at home, or ever for that matter. Thanks. Keep it up. Because things obviously go south. For example, back in 2010, a woman named Julie Leroy, she was working as an animal control officer when an owner of a pit bull puppy said she didn't want to keep her. Okay, this happens often. But when Julie saw the dog, she was in complete disbelief. She was like, yeah, I'll take this living animal. I'm not a monster. I can commit to this for sure. Thanks. People who abandon animals also, you're the devil. Don't do that. This dog, it was a hybrid animal. It wasn't healthy, but all the more reasons why you should stick around. The dog had a squished up body, a huge jaw, and a bad underbite, and it was oddly shaped. But you gotta love him still. Look, he's so cute. God, I want him. Little bread dude. That's because the dog suffered from short spine syndrome. That's because they got the dog from a backyard breeding place who was carelessly breeding a bunch of these dogs together. Just no effort at all. No care. Thankfully, Julie did bring the dog home and gave her a loving time. Sweet little thing. Olivia and I want a dog so badly. I would definitely take this little hybrid lady in a heartbeat, for sure. A little bread bed for her. Oh, I love dogs, even if they're, hybrid and created in a backyard. Number 4, glowfish. I never had a fish tank growing up. I don't know, not sure how I felt about a starfish just watching me sleep for hours on end. Back in 2012, Yorktown Technologies created hybrid glowfish. They were first created from zebrafish, but now there's a whole plethora of glowfish that you can purchase. Tiger barbs, rainbow sharks, you name it, everything's glowy now. I guess to hype up Avatar 2, I don't know. I don't see why we needed hybrid glowfish. Why are we doing this? Can we stop? Bioluminescence is natural. We see octopus or deep sea fish that have it naturally. Scientists in Singapore were originally aiming to modify fish to spot toxins in polluted water in an easier way. Cool. But on one hand, you're like, oh, these fish are pretty beautiful. They're glowy. Can I have one, please? Alan Blake, co-founder of said Yorktown Technologies, wanted them to glow only when near toxins. Now, this was back in 2003 when they first started. Guy wanted real-life notifications in the water. Cool. Today, we're at a point where glowfish are just being sold to houses for reasons. Just because. Do you want a glowfish? I don't know. Am I the only one that's like out of the loop with like the glowy fish vibe? Comment down below if a glowfish is something you want or now want. Oops, sorry. Number 3, Savannah cats. This one's been talked about for a while now. How do we feel about Savannah cats? I want to hear about this one as well. In May 2012, the International Cat Association registered this Savannah cat as a new breed. It's official, we got a new cat. Just what the world needs. More cats. I'm allergic, so, pardon my beef. The international cat community confirms it. Now, it all started in the late 80s when Judy Frank crossbred a male several with a domestic Siamese. The offspring, in turn, was appropriately named Savannah. Yeah, now we have cats with big ass ears, and they're so cute. I can't help it, they are so cute. Domestic cats mixed with wild African cats. I mean, it sounds like you're gonna get a cat. I don't know how to tell you. This is like a science experiment that they're like, oh, it worked. And apparently they're great. Apparently they're not too crazy temper-wise, but they're fun and they're energetic. Great for families. Who knew? Better than glowfish. Any day. Any day. Number 2. Pig human. Scientists at the Salk Institute for Biological Scientists, what a mouthful that was, have created a human-pig hybrid. Yeah, in 2017, when worlds collide, let's do it. An embryo was placed in an adult pig for 4 weeks, and then when it was taken out and further analyzed, the embryos, not only one survived, but they also contained some human cells. So their hope now was to grow human organs inside of pigs, instead of, waiting for a donor. Impatient, but okay, we're listening. In 1910, zoologists figured out that it might even be possible to create hybrids between humans and their closest relatives as well. Yeah, no matter how this ends, either Planet of the Apes or Planet of the Pigs, I did my part, okay? I recycled. I didn't f with animal DNA, like Jurassic Park. I just kinda got a job. I don't know. Hands are clean. And finally, number 1, Stubbins Firth. We saved Firth for first. Let's do it. This is one of the craziest science projects I've ever heard of, so buckle up. Stubbins Firth, a researcher from Pennsylvania back in the late 1700s. First of all, as you could probably guess, methods back in the 1700s were often messy and pretty much illegal in every way. Firth was a doctor in training at the time, and he decided to prove to the world that yellow fever was not contagious. Yeah, imagine if you had Twitter. Firth would surgically insert vomit from his patients with yellow fever. He would insert vomit into his body. He would insert all their yuck into his wounds, all over his face, his eyes, you name it. He was trying to get it. He was going the extra, I'm gonna throw up. He was going the extra mile, all in the name of medical research. Even urine and saliva too. Anything yucky, he was rubbing it in. Firth, to all of our surprise, did not get sick. He was proud of that one. He told everybody the news loudly. He mansplained it at like 4 a.m. We look back now though and we realize Firth just sampled late stage patients, so they were further along. Much further, say, than the contagious period. So basically he volunteered to dump all the on his Yeah, science. History is gross. Science as well. Gets a little messy sometimes.
Starting off this countdown, we have a Zorse. Now this is a mix between a zebra and a horse, which why? Scientists are out here just breeding animals that kind of have similar features just to see what will happen and what their offspring will look like, which a lot of people fear, because what if we cross the wrong thing and then create a dominant invasive species? Anyways, these animals were created after crossbreeding a male zebra with a female horse. The offspring look more like a horse than the zebra, but they still have their key identifying stripes. The first Zorse was created during the 19th century by Charles Darwin. They are still around to this day, but are extremely rare. This is because Zorses are infertile. They can't reproduce on their own. So the only way we can create these animals is if scientists force breed them. In our 9th spot, we have the Zubron. Now, you might be thinking, this is a cross with some animal and a zebra. Well, that's what I thought, but I was wrong. This is a cross between domestic cattle and the European bison, whatever. Zubrons were first created by Leopold Walicki in 1847, but scientists didn't breed the first fertile Zubron until 1960. In fact, after World War I, a lot of people believed that Zubrons were going to replace domestic cattle because they were at a lower risk of developing diseases. So all throughout the 1950s and 60s, scientists were working on creating these animals in labs, which I mean any animal born in a lab always receives backlash and is subject to a number of controversies. But in the late 1980s, the experiments were shut down. Nowadays, there's only one herd left on Earth. Moving on to number 8, we have the humans with animal valves. When humans need to have a heart valve transplant, they have a couple of options. Either they can get a biological heart valve replacement or a mechanical heart valve replacement. Biological heart valve replacements are made from animal tissues, such as tissues from sheep, pigs, cows, even horses. In fact, many people walking around today are able to do so only because their hearts contain valves taken from animals. It's kind of trippy. In our 7th spot, we have Dan and Mary Gari. Dan and Mary Gari are transplant cardiologists who have managed to grow human muscle cells in pig embryos. They are now trying to grow human vasculature in pigs as well. The thing that they are worried about though is having someone's body reject the organs because it contains blood vessels from pigs. Now, how did they go about this experiment? Well, they deleted the genes in the pig embryos that they would need to develop certain tissues. Then they inject modified human cells in there. After 17 to 27 days, the embryos made muscle tissues formed entirely of human cells. Moving on to number 6, we have the leopon. A leopon is a mix between a male leopard and a female lion. And I swear every photo of them look fake or edited. It's because leopons have a head of a lion with its mane, but then a body of a leopard with all its spots. Like, it doesn't look real at all. It looks like someone photoshopped the two animals together. But alas, they are real and low-key terrifying. They can grow to be larger than their full-grown leopard father. Like, they are massive. The first reference to the leopon was back in the 1st century by Roman author and naturalist Pliny the Elder. But it wasn't until 1910 that someone saw one in real life out in the wild. But again, controversy with these guys is that leopards and lions don't naturally mate with each other. They are forced to breed in captivity together. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the farm cattle. Back in the 1990s, farmers in India were led to believe that if they crossbred their cattle, then they would be able to create cattle that would produce more milk. So they were like, hell yeah, more milk equals more money. Sure, let's do it. So they ended up crossing different breeds of bulls together and with cows. But this had huge consequences for the farmers. In the end, they created cattle that would produce more milk, but needed to be fed more and needed higher quality food, or else it wouldn't produce milk at all. Also, they were more prone to disease, so their vet bills were high. In the end, the cons outweighed the pros. They had to learn this the hard way. Moving on to number 4, we have Hiromitsu Nakochi. Hiromitsu Nakochi is a stem cell biologist from Tokyo. He is determined to use animals to produce human cells or organs. Basically, he hopes to grow human cells in mice and rats and then transplant those embryos into bigger surrogate animals like sheep or pigs. Here's the thing, he's got restrictions. If while conducting the experiments the rats or any animal starts to become more human-like, then they have to stop the experiments on them. It's part of the agreement he has with the government. They don't want humanized animals coming into existence, and neither do I. Moving on to number 3, we have the pig embryos. So in all parts of these series, we talked about how scientists like to use pigs for their experiments. Well, here's another group of researchers running tests on pigs. Scientists are currently working on growing kidneys in pigs. This team is collecting small samples of human blood or skin, and then the cells are separated, cultured, and then treated with different drugs. Next, the technician selects a pig embryo that was altered so that it lacks the gene that it would need to grow its own kidneys. So then the human cells were injected into it so it would grow human kidneys instead. Their hope is that when the pigs grow, they can then remove the human kidneys and then transplant it into the recipient's bodies. In fact, in the US alone, around 20 people die every day waiting for transplants, so this could help them. In our 2nd spot, we have monkey-human embryos. I'm telling you, scientists are running too many experiments on monkeys and chimps, and I'm not fond of the idea of having monkeys and humans crossing, you know, hello, Planet of the Apes, no thank you. Anyways, an international team of scientists introduced human stem cells into monkey embryos and maintained these embryos in culture. Some of the embryos lived for up to 19 days, but only a small minority of the ones that had human cells in them did actually survive. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the growler bear. And honestly, I just like saying its name. Like, it sounds funny. Like, growler. I love it. Anyways, this is a cross between a polar bear and a brown grizzly bear. I kid you not, sometimes they call it the pizzly bear, but it sounds like piss, so let's just stick with growler. Now, here's the thing. The reason why these bears are mating is actually really sad. Because of climate change, polar bears have less and less partners to mate with. So out of desperation, they're mating with grizzly bears. It's really sad. It's believed that the first growler bear was discovered in 2006. On April 16th, 2006, a hunter named Jim Martle was out hunting when he captured a growler bear. At first, he thought it was just a polar bear, but officials took a look at it and noticed that it had strange features. Later, it was determined that it was a growler bear.
At number 10 with Oliver. Oliver was a chimpanzee that was acquired by American trainers in 1960. Now, they instantly thought something was strange about him. His face was too flat, his hair was too thin, his eyes were a strange colour, and he also did something that no other chimp does. Oliver walked upright on two legs. This led his owners to speculate that he was the product of crossbreeding between a human and a chimp known as a humanzee. It might sound crazy, but Dr. Gordon Gallup of the University of New York said there was reason to suspect that Oliver may be a human-chimpanzee hybrid. Humans and chimps share at least 99% of their basic biological chemistry. Oliver died in 2012 with the scientific community deeming him to be a normal chimp, although a full, complete DNA test was never done. Next up at number 9 now, we have the human-pig chimera. In January 2017, scientists announced they had created a real-life human-pig hybrid. The embryos they made were only a tiny bit human, less than 0.001%. The rest was all pig, but crucially, it was a hybrid. They only lasted for 28 days, but the scientists felt it was a step in the right direction. They hoped that eventually animals could even grow entire human organs ready for use. How does this one make you guys feel? I know it can be pretty divisive. At number 8 now, we have the Ningyo. The Ningyo is the Japanese equivalent of a mermaid, and in one special shrine, people claim they have a specimen. It's been dated to over 1,400 years old and bears a striking resemblance to the artwork depicting these creatures. Some visitors to the shrine claim that it's made out of stone or wood, but that's incorrect. It is genuine organic matter. Here's the thing though, other people say it's most likely advanced taxidermy, with people splicing them together after death. What do you guys think though? At number 7 now, we have the mouse ear. In 2016, Japanese scientists announced they had grown a human ear on the back of a rat. They used human stem cells injected into the rat. The stem cells developed into human cartilage tissue and molded in the rat into the shape of an ear. Now the aim for all of this is to be able to help children with facial abnormalities and give them fully grown body parts from their own DNA so it won't get rejected. Coming in at number 6 now, we have the half sheep. In June 2017, villagers from South Africa said that the offspring of a local sheep was sent by the devil, but to others though it looked like a human-sheep hybrid. When the villagers called in expert help, even the chief director of the veterinary services said that he thought it looked oddly human. The vets then took it away to study. They suspected it was due to a fever in the sheep's mother that caused the deformity, but the village elders maintained that it was sent by the devil and was born after a coupling between a man and a sheep. Alright, next up at number 5 now, we have the horse baby of Benin. This 2012 story comes from the city of Benin in Nigeria, where a woman gave birth to an offspring that looked a lot like a horse. This all happened in a church, with witnesses saying the mother had to hold on to someone's leg as she went into labor. The priest of the church then warned everyone around to stay clear of the demonic object. In reality though, it is probably just a deformed human pregnancy, or even a total fake, because we only really have this video to go on. Coming in at number 4 now, we have the Russian lamb. This claim comes from a farm in southern Russia in 2015, where a sheep gave birth to a lamb that basically looks like an old man, to be honest. See for yourself though. The video shows the lamb not long after it was born, making sort of odd grunting noises as the mother tried to clean it. The farmer was shocked, and some of the locals thought it was actually a human-sheep hybrid. The general consensus though is that it's just a facial deformity, as the rest of the lamb seemed to be in working order. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the Thai cow. In 2010, a story emerged from Thailand of a cow that had given birth to a very human-like creature. The local people poured baby powder on the body and burned incense in the hopes of cleansing the area of evil. The mouth, head and stomach were certainly quite human-looking, while the hooves were clearly cow-like. Although the local people think this is some evil hybrid, there's a good chance it is just a deformed cow calf. I also think the online hysteria was made worse with these pictures because of the baby powder. It really made this thing look even creepier. At number 2 now, we have the sheep with human livers. In 2005, researchers at the University of Nevada created sheep with organs containing millions of human cells. They announced they could grow livers in sheep that were 20% human. As with other examples we've talked about, the researchers used embryonic stem cells, and they did it for the same reason, to eventually develop fully grown human organs on demand. And finally, at number 1, we have the human mouse. The results of this experiment were announced in 2015. Scientists thought they had found the DNA sequence responsible for making human brains bigger than other animals. So they took the human gene for this and the chimpanzee version of the gene and put them into mice. The ones with the chimpanzee brain DNA didn't really have much bigger brains, but the ones with human sequences grew 12% bigger. The mice would not have gone on to achieve human levels of intelligence, but these human-mouse hybrid brains could be a step in that direction. Starting with number 10 now, we have David Reimer. When this Canadian man was born in 1965, he was sent to be circumcised, but the doctors experimented with an unconventional technique and ended up removing David's entire penis. Now, doctors told his parents the best solution would be to give him a sex change operation right there and then, raise him as a girl, and never let him know the truth. This ended up tearing his parents apart, and his dad told David the truth when he was 14. David then chose to get a reverse sex operation. It was a success. However, David struggled a lot with the events of his past and ended up committing suicide at just 38 years old. At number 9 now, we have the chimp baby. In the 1930s, a scientist called Winthrop Kellogg thought a chimp could grow up to be like a human if it lived alongside a human baby, his own son. For 9 months, he conducted experiments, and his son Donald was inseparable from the chimp called Gua. They ate together and they played together. They noticed that Gua was picking up more and more human tendencies from Donald than ever before, but the experiment came to an abrupt halt when Donald, the human baby, began to regress and become more like a chimp. Apparently, he would just sit there howling and wailing and would struggle to pick up even basic language like a normal human baby. The experiment was stopped immediately. Alright, at number 8 now, we have the monster study. This 1939 experiment was conducted on 22 orphans to see how children responded to positivity and negativity when it comes to speech therapy. Half the children were praised for their efforts, while the other half were teased and belittled for their speech imperfections. Many of the children who received this negative feedback went on to suffer serious psychological damage for the rest of their lives. It was so bad that some of them could barely even speak again. The monster study got its name from its shocking experimentation on orphan children just to prove a hypothesis. Alright guys, coming in at number 7 now, we have Tusco. This one was just messed up, if I'm honest. In 1962, when the CIA was absolutely obsessed with finding out the effects of LSD, they experimented on an elephant with the help of the University of Oklahoma. The elephant, called Tusco, weighed 3.5 tons and was given enough LSD to make 3,000 humans hallucinate. The CIA were trying to see if they could make the elephant enter must, which is a naturally occurring state where elephants become violent and uncontrollable. The experiment was a total disaster. Tusco almost immediately collapsed and had a seizure for almost 2 hours before finally dying. At number 6 now, we have the Stanford Prison Experiment. This psychology experiment conducted by Stanford University involved splitting 24 random students into 2 groups. One group were the prison guards and the others were their prisoners. This was set up for them to study how power and authority works within human groups, but it got really messed up. It was supposed to last 2 weeks, but had to be stopped after just 6 days because the guards began to abuse their power. They would emotionally and physically abuse the prisoners. After just the first day alone, the guards were already attacking them with fire extinguishers. Yeah. Some of them suffered serious mental and physical injuries for life. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the yellow fever experiment. Dr. Firth was a scientist who was trying to prove that yellow fever was not contagious and was actually due to the difference between summer and winter. Now, in an effort to prove this, he tried to infect himself with yellow fever by drinking the vomit of victims. He also injected it into his body and even poured it onto his eyes. Well, it turns out he was right about the whole seasonal thing, but for the wrong reason. It's mosquitoes that are the ones who spread yellow fever, and they hibernate in the winter. So all the vomit drinking and pouring in the eyes was for nothing. At the number 4 spot now we have testicle radiation. In 1963, researchers offered prisoners in the Washington and Oregon area $25 to participate in reproductive radiation tests. Now they were told they wanted to see how a normal dose of X-ray level radiation would affect a man's testicles. Instead, they hit them with about 6 times that amount of radiation. The prisoners, as you might expect, developed testicular cancer, they became sterile and had many other health problems. The class action lawsuit only gave $2,000 to each of the victims. We're at the number 3 spot now and we have TGN-1412. This was the name of an experimental drug used to treat leukemia. As with most drugs for humans, it was first tested on animals to see if it was non-fatal. It wasn't. In fact, everything was fine with the animals. They moved on to testing the drug on humans, and just to be safe, they gave them a dose 500 times lower than the level found safe in animals. 6 of the test subjects were hospitalized with massive organ failure. The trial was stopped and researchers started to work on why this drug was fine in the animals but almost killed 6 humans that it was given to. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the Guatemala syphilis experiment. This experiment involved US-backed Guatemalan doctors infecting soldiers, prisoners and prostitutes in Guatemala with syphilis in order to study it. They wanted to see what the effectiveness of penicillin was on syphilis, except they only used penicillin on about half of the 1,308 people involved in the study. At least 83 people died, and 63 years later, President Barack Obama apologized on behalf of the US to the Guatemalan president. And finally at number 1 now, we have MK Ultra. This CIA experiment was conducted in the 50s and the 60s in an effort to see if LSD and other drugs could mind control people. They tested the drug on countless unwitting citizens, some of them weren't even American. Many of them suffered life-altering mental conditions and became very unstable. Those that tried to speak out about what happened met mysterious deaths such as suspicious suicides. Not surprisingly, most of the documents involved with these shocking experiments were later destroyed.
Number 10. A wolfen. A wolfen is part whale, part dolphin. The existence of wolfens have been a legend for centuries. Known in fisherman lore as the Great Grey Beast, they come from the mating of a female bottlenose dolphin with a male false killer whale. Now, a false killer whale, by the way, is not actually a whale. Both these animals come from the oceanic dolphin family with the toothed whale suborder. Wolfens are one of the rarest hybrid animals. Citizen wolfen sightings in the wild are common, but concrete evidence still eludes scientists. Currently, we can only reliably see these animal hybrids in captivity. Wolfens are an extremely interesting balance of their parents as well. Their skin is a dark gray, the perfect blend of light gray dolphin skin and black false killer whale skin. They also have 66 teeth, which is the precise average of a dolphin's 88 teeth and the false killer whale's 44 teeth. To me, these look weird and they kind of make me uncomfortable. Number 9. Wolf dog. A wolf dog, also called a wolf dog hybrid or wolf hybrid, is a candid hybrid resulting from the mating of a wolf and a dog. The term wolf dog is preferred by most of the animal's proponents and breeders because the domestic dog recently was taxonomically recategorized as a subspecies of wolf. The American Veterinary Medical Association and the United States Department of Agriculture refers to the animals as wolf dog hybrids. Rescue organizations consider any dog with wolf heritage within the last 5 generations to be a wolf dog, including some established wolf dog breeds. In 1998, USDA estimated an approximate population of 300,000 wolf dogs in the United States, the highest of any country worldwide, with some other sources giving a population possibly as high as 500,000. In the first generation of hybrids, gray wolves are most often crossed with wolf-like dogs such as German Shepherds, Siberian Huskies, and Alaskan Mammutes for an appearance most appealing to owners desiring to own an exotic pet. Because wolf dogs are generic mixtures between wolves and dogs, their physical and behavior characteristics cannot be predicted with any certainty. Number 8. Zebroid. A hybrid between a zebra and any other member of the equine family is one of the most common in the animal kingdom. In most cases, the sire is a zebra stallion, the mother could be anyone. Known collectively as zebroid, the name of the breed depends on who the mother is. A fowl could be a zorse, zebrel, zonkey,
zebunkie, or a zony. Zebra hybrids usually have the appearance of whichever animal they have been crossbred with, while still retaining the striped coat of a pure zebra. Now, most of these animals don't have fully striped coats. Instead, the stripes are usually found on just the legs or non-white areas of the body, depending on the genetics of the non-zebra parent. When it comes to zonkies, donkeys are closely related to zebras, and both animals belong to the horse family. These zebra-donkey hybrids are very rare. In South Africa, they occur where zebras and donkeys are found in proximity to each other. Today, various zebroids are bred as riding and draft animals and as curiosities in circuses and smaller zoos. Number 7. Growler bear. Known variously as a pizzly bear, a growler bear is a grizzly and polar bear hybrid that is a rare hybrid within the Ursidae family. Tales of such creatures were told within the First Nation communities of North America down the centuries. But it wasn't until DNA samples were taken from a strange looking bear found near Sash Harbor in the Canadian Arctic in 2006 that their existence was finally confirmed. Growler bears are interesting because, generally speaking, polar bears and grizzlies have a mutual contempt for one another and will rarely coexist in captivity or in their natural habitats. However, extreme situations and human interventions have produced more of these adorably shaggy caramel colored hybrid bears. They typically grow to be slightly smaller than polar bears, averaging 60 inches tall at the shoulder and around 1,000 pounds, but they're better to be able to survive in warm climates thanks to their grizzly bear genes. Number 6. Jag lion. A jag lion, sometimes referred to as a jaguan, is one of the many portmanteaus used to define hybrid species of animals. In this case, it is a blend of two cats, a lion, and a jaguar. Both belong to the genus Panthera. Their genetics aren't too far off. It's not surprising that they're able to mate, but they are extremely rare. A jag lion is the offspring of a female lion, lioness, and a male jaguar. To date, there haven't been any matings of a male lion and a female jaguar, so that hybrid doesn't have its own special name. Now, spots are definitely a dominant gene, and any speckled big cat is sure to pass them on to their offspring. And like its mother, the jag lion cub has a distinct tuft of hair at the end of its tail. It wasn't until the 21st century that this crossbreed became known to the world. Before this century, there hadn't been any record of such a cross being made, despite experiments in crossbreeding lions, leopards, and tigers. They are rare. And how rare is extremely rare? Well, right now there are only 2 jag lions in the world. They live in Canada and they were bred unintentionally and are in captivity. There has been no written record of any other crossbreeding between lions and jaguars. Number 5. The Iron Age pig. The Iron Age pig is a hybrid between a wild boar and a domestic Tamworth pig meant to recreate the type of pig represented by prehistoric works of the Iron Age in ancient Europe. A project to create them, under the name Iron Age pig, started in the early 1980s. In many areas, a variable of mixtures of these hybrids and feral pigs of all domesticated original stock have become invasive species. Their status as pest animals has reached crisis proportions in Australia, parts of Brazil, and parts of the United States, and the animals are often freely hunted in hopes of eradicating them or at least reducing them to a controllable population. When bred intentionally, the hybrids are intended to visually recreate the backbreed look of pigs represented in the prehistoric artworks of the Iron Age and in early ancient Egypt. Now, generally, they are only raised in Europe for a specialty meat market, and in keeping with their heritage, are generally more aggressive and harder to handle than pure domestic pigs. Number 4. Beefalo. Beefalo constitute a hybrid offspring of domestic cattle, usually a male in managed breeding programs, and the American bison, usually a female in managed breeding programs. Accidental crosses were noticed as long ago as 1749 in the southern states of North America during British colonization. Cattle and bison were first intentionally crossbred during the mid-19th century. In 1983, the 3 main beefalo registration groups reorganized under the American Beefalo World Registry. Until November 2008, there were 2 beefalo associations, the American Beefalo World Registry and American Beefalo International. These organizations joined to form American Beefalo Association Incorporated, which currently operates as the registering body for beefalo in the United States. Now, the breed was created to combine the characteristics of both animals for beef production. A recent USDA study showed beefalo meat, like bison meat, actually tended to be lower in fat and cholesterol. They are also thought to produce less damage to the rangeland than cattle. Personally, I just think saying beefalo is fun. You should try it. Number 3. Green sea slug. Possibly the most unusual hybrid animal on this list is the green sea slug. It's a sea slug that incorporates genetic material from the algae it eats into its own DNA. So it's part sea slug, part algae. The strange result is a plant-animal hybrid that can consume food like an animal or create its own nutrients via photosynthesis. Scientists call these sea slugs emerald green alcia. Their ability to turn solar energy into food is what gives them their brilliant green hue. Scientists acknowledge that they'll have to do more research in order to determine how this phenomenon happens, but as of now, this is their only successful instance of gene transfer from one type of complex organism to another. This creature can be found along the east coast of the United States, including the states of Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Rhode Island, Florida, and Texas. They can also be found as far north as Nova Scotia, Canada, and are most commonly found in salt marshes, tidal marshes, pools, and shallow creeks. Number 2. Hybrid crocodile. The only known hybrid crocodile in the world is named Yai. Yai's parents are a saltwater crocodile and a Siamese crocodile. The crossbreeding happened only because its parents were kept together in a zoo. It wouldn't have occurred in the wild as these two types of crocodiles have different habitats. Yai is huge. And in the year 2000, Guinness World Records said he was the world's largest crocodile held in captivity at 19 feet and 8 inches, which is as tall as a giraffe. He also weighed 2,645 pounds, which is almost the amount of 2 cows. Since then, Yai has grown even more and is now 21 feet long. He's located at the Samtapakran Crocodile Farm and Zoo in Thailand. I hope I said that right. All I gotta say is I'm glad he's in captivity. I can't imagine how I would react if I saw him out in the wild. And coming in at number 1, the super cow. The super cow, also known as a Belgian blue cow, is a breed of beef cattle from Belgium. The Belgium's blue's extremely lean, hyper-sculpted, ultra-muscular physique is termed double muscling. The double muscling phenotype is a heritable condition resulting in an increased number of muscle fibers instead of the normal enlargement of individual muscle fibers. This particular trait is shared with another breed of cattle known as Piedmontese. Both of these breeds have an increased ability to convert feed into lean muscle, which causes these particular breeds' meat to have a reduced fat content and reduced tenderness. The Belgian blue is named after its typically blue-gray mottled hair, however, its actual color can vary from white to black. The Belgian blue has been exported to many parts of the world. It is reported by DATIS by 24 countries in Africa, the Americas, Europe, and Oceania. Of these, 10 report population data. In 2022, the world population was estimated to be around 107,875. Now, double-muscled cows routinely experience dystocia difficulty in parturition, even when bred to normal beef bulls or dairy bulls because of a narrower birth canal. The birth weight and width of the calf also may be higher than in animals without the double muscling gene. People also think it's unfair to breed these animals because of their difficulty walking due to the muscles and how big they are. These cows are absolutely jacked, and I would not want to run into one of them or get in a fight with it.
Kicking off the list at number 10, glowfish. I never had a fish tank growing up, but if I did, I probably wouldn't want any hybrid glowy fish bouncing around in there, that's for sure. I don't know. That's what lava lamps are for, no? That's a completely different vibe. You'd be doing this while you're trying to sleep, trying to dodge out glowfish. Back in 2012, while the world was otherwise, preoccupied with not dying or whatever was supposed to happen in 2012, Yorktown Technologies created a hybrid glowfish. They were first created out of zebrafish, but now there's a whole plethora of glowfish that you can purchase, not just the zebra kind. We got tiger barbs, we got rainbow shark, and betta. I don't know what betta is, but we got them, and they're glowy. We figured out how to make them glowy, I guess to hype up Avatar 2. I think that was supposed to come out back then. I don't see why we needed hybrid glowfish, but here we are. Bioluminescence is natural. We see octopus or deep sea fish that have it naturally, that's cool. But when it's not natural, you can tell, you know what I mean? It looks plasticky, it looks not right. Scientists in Singapore were originally aiming to modify fish to spot toxins in polluted water easier. But then on one hand, you're like, they're pretty mesmerizing. They're glowy, we like them, they're cute. Alan Blake, co-founder of said Yorktown Technologies, wanted them to glow only when near toxins. Yeah, this was back in 2003 when they first started. The guy wanted real life toxin notifications in the water. That's crazy. Oh, toxins, there we go. Good idea, but like, there's other ways, I think. Also, don't fish love shiny things? These guys would be lunched in like a matter of minutes. Today we're at a point where glowfish are being sold to houses for for reasons. Do you want a glowfish? I wouldn't be able to sleep. I don't want any part of that. It doesn't affect them in any way. It doesn't hurt. Apparently their skin just changes. I don't know. That kind of feels like a big deal to me. I'd be like, what's going on? Help. Number 9, see-through frog. Yeah, just when you thought frogs were already hard to spot and catch, boom. Now they're invisible, pal. Good luck. Back in 2016, through artificial insemination, scientists successfully took the DNA of 2 kinds of recessive color mutant frogs. They took black-eyed and gray-eyed frogs, and then they did science. That's what they did. They just smacked them together, and they're like, whoa, that was so easy. They combined them together to create a frog whose skin is always translucent. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason for this. It's cool, but there's also a reason. The see-through factor allows observation of organ growth or cancer formation without having to cut into them. You know what I mean? Kind of helps when you can see the problem, right? No dissection needed for further study. That was the goal here. Not bad. But imagine being see-through at all times. I'd be like, hey pal, my eyes are up here, okay? Quit staring at my pancreas. Gotta move on. Number 8, savanna cats. This one has been talked about for a while now. It's pretty common, weirdly enough. How do we feel about savanna cats? Let's talk about these little critters. In May 2012, the International Cat Association, I want to work there, first of all, they registered this savanna cat as a new official breed. It's official! The international cat community confirmed it. And it all started in the late 80s when Judy Frank crossbred a male several with a domestic Siamese. The offspring was appropriately named Savannah. Yeah. Imagine if I was like, no, it's actually Amanda. I lied to you. They just call them savanna cats for no reason. In turn, now we have cats with big ears. We did it, folks. We did it. Domestic cats mixed with wild African cats. I mean, it sounds like you're gonna get another cat. And we did. Great work. I don't know how to tell you this. I mean, apparently they're great. They're not too crazy temper-wise, but they're fun and energetic at the same time. Apparently they're great for families. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying great for families in a list that gets as dark as it's gonna get. Number 7, the Zorse. The Zorse. Yes, the male zebra, female horse. Now we get a really fun word. Zorse. The Zorse. Sorry. It sounds like a god. Yeah, there's Thor, Odin, and then Zorse. Zebroids, that's their scientific name, they're usually quite common historically. Charles Darwin even noted some in his work. So since the 19th century, crossbreeding zebras with horses, donkeys, you name it, has been done. More often than not, and this is what makes them stand out, zebroids will experience dwarfism. So they're very petite little guys. In 2010, a zedonk was born. It was a zebra donkey, but again, back in the 70s, this happened before, and no one really talked about it. There were 3 born in Colchester Zoo. Yeah, those zookeepers were like, how do we make zoos new and hip? Bizarre. Humans are so weird. They're not too smart, humans. They're like, yeah, let's put these in a cage. It'll be fine. Number 6, bees. I hate bees so much. When the window's closed, we're good. Remember when we had to worry about killer bees for a couple months, like a year ago? During an already dark time? Should we still be worried? Are these killer bees coming back? Are they a real thing? Hybrid bees? Those are also, Will hybrid bees fight the killer bees? Can we watch this? Can we tune in and watch this on Triller? An experiment in the 70s tried to change the hashtag bee game, and in turn, we got a brand new bee. Yeah, we love those. Just new bees to dodge outside. The idea at first was to take a regular honeybee and then breed it with an African honeybee. Ideally, we would get a hybrid bee that can safely provide more honey than a regular honeybee. Okay, that's steps. We're going towards the future with this one, right? On paper. The experiment obviously didn't work with these new bees, and they didn't do that at all. And worst part of all, the bees got out. Yeah, imagine that email. To whom it may concern. Oh God, I left the door open, I'm sorry. These bees are aggressive towards other kinds of bees. They're not too nice, they're not too friendly. And they're very aggressive towards humans as well, in case you were wondering. And when these bees sting, their stinger stays with them afterwards so they can continue stinging multiple times with their stinger butts. Yeah, they don't fall off, right? That's our only hope when we see a bee the size of a tennis ball. We're like, he won't, will he? Will he? I don't think. These bees would. Because they can. Yeah, hybrid killer bees. Victims have received 10 times the amount of stings as regular swarms. It's a lot of stings. It's a lot of movements from the bee's hips there. That's like some Caesar. That's like Julius Caesar numbers right there. That's crazy. They react to disturbances 10 times faster, and they will also chase said disturbance a quarter of a mile to find it. So yeah, don't sneeze. These bees have caused over 1,000 deaths, so yeah, I guess we should worry. We should definitely worry. Hit that thumbs up just because we're like, no, there's no good in this. That's scary, that's so scary. Hit that thumbs up for bee progression. Let's save the bees. Hit the thumbs up for the bees. Let's save all the bees except for those kind. The other ones are good. Number 5, Tigons. Tigons be bygones. Haha. He's good. I was gonna say liger, but that's been used before. We know what that one looks like. Tigons were a real hybrid animal you could see for yourself at both the London Zoo and the Manchester Zoo once upon a time. This was of course back in the late 30s where folks didn't, bat an eye towards these kind of things with animals. Yeah, step on up and see the tigon. A tiger head, a lion body, and a tiger tail. That's what happens when you put animals in the same cage. Come on out. Well, sometimes they'll get along too well in said cage, and then you'll get a tigon. Tigon hybrids were seen long before the 90s. Actually, in 1837, Queen Victoria was gifted a tigon. Imagine that. I wouldn't know what to do with that. I'd be like, hi. What are you? Number 4, Hiromitsu Nakachi. Stem cell biologist from Tokyo. This one is insane. Now we're getting to the dark ones here. Just recently, his experiments have been approved by the government, so things are actively in play here, not just, Farmer Joe in the early 1900s. No, this is modern science. This is some Black Mirror type stuff here. Hiromitsu hopes to grow human cells inside of mice and rats, and then transplant said embryos into surrogate animals. A lot of animals, a lot of cells, a lot of traffic, a lot of moving around, and a lot of science, apparently. Cells into rats and mice embryos. How did we even get here? Who thought of this first? We went from the Salem witch trials to rodents being genetically manipulated so they can make pancreases for themselves. I like the word pancreas. I've been using it a few times lately. But his hope was that the rodent bodies would use the human cells to then make a pancreas for themselves. Here's the thing though, while conducting said experiments, they found that the rats were starting to develop a human-type brain. That's when they pulled the plug on that entire project. Yeah, the second humans and animals get too close, governments will come in and go, stop. Number 3, beefalo. Beefalo sounds like a Pokemon. It sounds like a thing that's close to being real but shouldn't be, and that's where it should have stayed, if I'm being honest. The beefalo should have only been a concept. But then a guy named Charles Buffalo Jones did the impossible. Look at him go. One day in 1906, he said, hey, watch this, and then started breeding Arizona bison with domestic cattle in order to produce a hardy commercial animal, just something new to make some money. He ended up giving up on this project entirely, and then he just released the animals. Yeah, guy just got bored and released science projects to the wilds. What could go wrong? The beefalo then found their way into a national park where hunting was banned, so they thrived. And they thrived without natural predators at that. The population began to grow by 50% every single year, and at first you're like, wow, we did it. This is like Jurassic Park, but cute. No, their environmental impact was horrible. It was not ideal. They played God. They messed with the circle of life. You eat one bug, then there's a hurricane somewhere else. First off, these guys are very thirsty animals. They can consume 10 gallons of water each trip to a watering hole. They're like that one kid growing up drinking at the water fountain. You're like, guy, save some. Please hurry. I'm so thirsty. Yeah, they drank all the water. Every animal was so thirsty after. They also in said water, so they ruined the entire water park for every other animal involved. Yeah, all bad. Entire ecosystems were messed up at this point. Everybody got thirsty because Charles Buffalo Jones was like, hey, watch this. Let's try something new. Number 2, don't try this at home. Not sure how many times I have to say this, but don't try any crossbreeding at home. Or ever, for that matter. Because things go south, obviously. For example, back in 2010, a woman named Julie Leroy was working as an animal control officer when an owner of a pit bull puppy said that she didn't want to keep her. This is normal. Maybe a kid will come into the picture, maybe the dog's too aggressive, whatever, and then they have to give it back. Okay. When Julie saw the dog, she was in shock. She was like, yeah, I'll take this living animal, first of all. I'm not a monster, thank you, I can do this. People who abandon animals, also, they're the devil. Side note. This dog was different, but it wasn't mean. It was just a hybrid. It wasn't healthy, but all the more reason why you should stick around. Know what I mean? The dog had a squished body, it had a huge jaw, and a bad underbite, and it was oddly shaped. That's because the dog suffered from short spine syndrome. That's because they got the dog from this backyard breeder who was carelessly breeding a bunch of dogs together, just for fun, not really knowing what he's doing. Thankfully, Julie did know what she was doing. She brought the dog home and gave her a loving home. Sweet little thing. Olivia and I want a dog so badly, so you know what? We'll take this hybrid little lady anytime. Her name's Kuda. She's in great hands, but look at her, she's so cute. And finally, number 1, lions. Back in the 80s, the Chatbar Zoo in Chandigarh, India, they tried this fun little science experiment for themselves. Yeah, they tried an experimental program rather, where they would breed together domestic lions, little petite, well, small in terms of a lion. They would mix them with these massive, beastly African lions in the hopes that they would meet in the middle somewhere and be introduced to the wild and help with the dying population of wild lions in India. Again, on paper, we wanted to get involved, we want to help restructure the lives of this animal, but the zoo found 2 African lions that were being used in a circus and then brought brought them in to breed with their 2 Asiatic lions. And it didn't. Obviously, it's number 1, it didn't work. When the cubs were born, it was clear that this was already a mistake. The cubs had weak back legs, they were having extreme trouble walking, and as they got older, their immune systems just started to fail faster and faster. By 2000, they'd bred more than 70 of these hybrid lions. That's a lot of projects, a lot of experiments. So they finally decided to stop the program, thankfully, and all the males were given vasectomies in order to stop any further reproduction, which is so odd to me. Like, I'm not a fan of humans at all at this point. They're like, hey, welcome to Earth. Yeah, it kind of sucks, right? It's hot. Okay, cool, we're gonna stop making you now. Cheers. But naturally, thankfully, there are laws that prohibit officials from just killing these animals, so now they're just simply waiting for them to die naturally, which is, it's better. It's certainly better, but still, stop messing with nature, guys. How many times do I have to tell you? Stop messing with nature.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the centaur. This is one of the most famous hybrid creatures of all time, the infamous horseman of Greek legends. It isn't quite clear exactly how this legend originated, but there is a really interesting theory, which I love. Basically, some people believe that perhaps the idea for this creature came about when the people of the Minoan culture, who are said to have possibly at the time been unfamiliar with horses, they ran into a tribe of horse riders. The skill these people had in riding horses, along with how being able to traverse on horse would of course change the way that the Minoan people lived, basically just inspired them to create these tales of the horse-human hybrid creature. This seems like a very possible origin for the legend, but regardless of where it came from, the legend stuck around into Roman times, where it was then highly debated whether or not these creatures actually may exist. Clearly, however, this legend would go on to endure long past the days of ancient Rome, considering the fact that the tales of the centaur still exist today. In our number 9 spot today, we have the echidna. The echidna is a half-woman, half-snake creature that first became well known through Greek mythology. In the legends, she is described as being half-beautiful maiden and half-fearsome snake. In fact, Hesiod described her as an irresistible monster who is like neither mortal men nor the undying gods. Instead, she was, quote, half a nymph with glancing eyes and fair cheeks, and half again a huge snake, great and awful with speckled skin, and she, quote, dies not nor grows old all her days. Echidna is the partner to Typhon, who is a terrifying snake man, and the two are said to have created the most horrendous children. The first child was Orthrus, who was a 2-headed dog who guarded the cattle of Geryon. The second child was Cerberus, who was a dog with more than 2 heads who guarded the gates of Hades. And finally, their third child was the Lernaean Hydra, a serpent with many heads who had the ability to regrow any if they were to get cut off. This is all to say that Echidna had quite a terrifying story to her, and it's interesting because some scholars believe that the tales of dragons in medieval Europe were actually based in part on Echidna. In our number 8 spot today, we have the mandrake. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you might be familiar with mandrakes, and they are particularly interesting because they are one of the few examples that represent a human hybrid that is a mix between human and plant. The mandrake plant is a very real group of plants in the genus Mandragora, and they are usually found in the Mediterranean. It is believed that the tales of the mandrake come from the fact that often the roots of the mandrake have such a strange appearance, they sort of look like human faces. This likely would have been enough to fuel the legends, but things do not end here. The thing is that this plant has some hallucinogenic properties, so that, combined with the weird face-looking roots, and you have the perfect recipe for quite a legend. It's funny to think that this story probably started out because someone was on a bit of a trip. In the legends, when the plant is dug up from the ground, it will release a horrible scream that has the ability to kill anyone who hears it. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Sphinx. The Sphinx is of course commonly associated with ancient Egypt, and it is the creature that is depicted with the head of a human, the body of a large cat, and the wings of an eagle. Like I said, this image is often associated with ancient Egypt due to the famous monument that can be visited in Giza still today. But this isn't the only place the Sphinx is seen in legends. In Greek tradition, the Sphinx plays the role of a merciless woman who will kill and eat anyone who cannot answer her riddle as seen in the tragedy of Oedipus. When we take it over to Egypt, the Sphinx is often seen with the head of a man and was seen as a benevolent creature with incredible strength. The legends and imagery of the Sphinx have long endured the years since these ancient empires and continue today, and have even expanded into different cultures. In our number 6 spot today we have sirens. These creatures originated from the tales of ancient Greece, and in these stories, sirens were creatures with the head and upper body of a human woman, but with the legs and tails of a bird. These creatures were alluring and exceptionally dangerous, mostly to sailors. The siren would sing a beautiful song from the rocky shores, which were said to hide dangerous reefs below the water. Using her songs, she would lure sailors to this treacherous area, likely to meet their demise. The siren is an important character in the legend of Odysseus as he returned from Troy in the epic. In the legend, he had to tie himself to the mast of his ship in order to resist the temptations and the lure. The tales of the siren have lasted for years and were still quite prevalent when they made a reappearance in the writings of 17th century Jesuit priests, who believed that these creatures were in fact real. Today we still use the word siren and the term siren song to describe things or ideas that are exceptionally intriguing and alluring. Throughout the years, the descriptions of the siren have gone on to become a bit more mermaid-like than bird-like as they originated, which does bring me to my next point. In our number 5 spot today we have mermaids. Mermaids are one of the most famous creatures in our modern mythology that came all the way from ancient Assyria. These creatures with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a fish, all from the goddess Atargatis, who transformed herself into a mermaid after she was ashamed of herself for accidentally killing her partner. A tragic story that spurred the tales of mermaids for centuries to come. Since these legends, mermaids have appeared in stories all over the world, and often people regard them as less than fictional. Christopher Columbus swore he saw real mermaids on his voyage to the New World, but then again it's becoming abundantly clear that he had no idea what he was looking at for a lot of that journey. Some places and cultures have slightly varying versions of the mermaid, like the Selkie, which is an Irish and Scottish version of a mermaid who is half seal and half woman. Of course, this creature went on to inspire many famous stories, including the Disney smash hit, The Little Mermaid. In our number 4 spot today we have a harpy. Harpies are a character seen in Greek and Roman stories, and in those they are described as a bird, but with the head of a woman. And at first I thought that sounds kinda nice and cute, but when we take it back to some of the earliest mentions of harpy, like by the poet Ovid, we see them described as human vultures, which sounds significantly more terrifying than what I was imagining. In fact, harpies are quite often described as horrifying, disgusting creatures, with descriptions that only get more grim as time goes on. Initially, it seems as though harpies were seen as the personification of storm winds, and throughout the legends we see that they would often steal food from their victims as they were trying to eat, and also they would be responsible for carrying those who had done evil things to the Erinyes, who were the female deities of vengeance. When a person suddenly disappeared off the earth, it is thought to have been the work of the harpies. They were the agents of punishment who were known to be cruel, vicious, and pretty violent as well. In our number 3 spot today we have the Gorgons. It is possible that you may not be familiar with the term Gorgon, but it is very likely that you know one of them. The descriptions of the Gorgons do vary slightly, but they commonly refer to 3 sisters: Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa. These sisters were mostly human, except for the fact that their hair was made up of slithering, slimy snakes. The earliest examples of the Gorgons comes from the Greek mythology, in which the Gorgon-like creature had scales and claws, but no serpent hair. When the tales of the 3 sisters came into play, so did the stories of how they had horrifying faces that, should anyone gaze upon them, they would immediately be turned into stone. In the legends, 2 of the sisters are immortal, but the most famous of the trio, Medusa, was not. This led to her being slain by the demigod Perseus, but not so much could be said for the other 2. In our number 2 spot today we have the Minotaur. This creature was first seen in Greek legends and later Roman, and basically it is a creature that is part bull, part man. The name of this creature comes from the bull god Minos, who was a major deity in ancient times. The Minotaur is said to have been created as Minos competed with his brothers as ruler. During this time, Minos prayed to Poseidon, the sea god, to send him a snow-white bull as a sign of the god's favor. Minos was meant to sacrifice the bull in order to honor Poseidon, but he was entranced by the bull's beauty and decided to keep him, thinking that the god would accept a different sacrifice in place of the bull. Of course, Poseidon was not pumped about this decision, so he needed to punish Minos. He did this by making Minos' wife fall in love with the bull, and one thing led to another, and there was some very unnatural offspring. In the end, the Minotaur was born, but there was no natural food source for this creature, so instead it began to devour human flesh to appease its appetite. The creature is depicted as having the head and tail of a bull with the body of a man. While the most famous appearance of the Minotaur was in the Greek story of Theseus, who actually fought the Minotaur in the labyrinth, the legend of this creature has long prevailed and is seen in many stories still today, including Dungeons and Dragons, and some would even argue that the Beast in Beauty and the Beast is a creature modeled after the Minotaur. In our number 1 spot today we have the satyr. We're not just talking about Mr. Tumnus, we're taking it all the way back to the Greek stories of the creature who is half man and half goat. These creatures started out in legends as a male nature spirit with ears and a tail resembling those of a horse, but throughout the years they became more human-like and less beast-like before they began to gain these more goat-like characteristics. It is thought that perhaps the depiction of the goat-human hybrid comes from them sort of melding with the character Pan. Either way, these creatures are often depicted as being comically hideous, and they also have quite a few lewd descriptions that I can't exactly detail here on YouTube. Let's just say it is very obvious that they're always a little excited. This fits perfectly with the fact that these creatures are often known to love things like wine, music, dancing, and definitely women. Satyrs were companions to the god Dionysus and are believed to live in places like woodlands or the mountains or even in pastures. They are very motivated by sexual desires and are even known to do some pretty horrendous things in pursuit of these desires. Although these characters are quite ridiculous in a multitude of ways, they are also thought to possess a lot of really useful knowledge, but they need to be persuaded into sharing it. How human. That's the most human-like characteristic that these guys have.